Alright guys, in this tutorial we'll look how in plain vanilla JavaScript we can load up a JSON file containing records. In this case they are houses, and we have a record for our house here, and then we'll work on the data in order to make queries on this file and display statistical information about for example, we would like to list all the houses which have incomplete data, such as this house here doesn't have a value for the rooms, so we don't know how many rooms it has. And also we would like in this query here to sort the output data by the house name. So first is the house 2, then this house 6. And later we'll calculate the distance between the houses, and we'll find which one is closest to ours. So in case we have those coordinates, it appears that house number 6 should be closer to our house. For this we'll be using this Harvesttime formula. So let's start coding. For the data of the houses we are using a JSON server. If you type JSON server in Google, you can grab the first result, and this is our JSON server that we'll be using. In order to install it, we'll need the npm package manager, and we'll have to run this command. If you don't have npm, just go to node.js.org and choose here your operating system and download and install Node.js. Afterwards, you can just execute this command here, npm install -g global JSON server. The next thing we would like to do is to see what's inside of the JSON file. So we can see it's an object. Inside we have array with the name of houses, and each of the houses is a separate object inside of this array. Each house has coordinates as well as parameters such as rooms, value, and name. And when we go to our console, our command prompt, we can just use this JSON server buildings.json. So this will grab the data from the JSON file and will create an API resource under localhost port 3000 houses address. So we can visit the address. If we refresh, this is our resource API. We'll try to fetch the data from here. So we open up Visual Studio Code, and here we'll create a new file, buildings.html. We'll save the file. For the first task, we would like to display the houses with incomplete data. This will be the heading for the first task. And then we'll have a placeholder where we would like to display this data. It will have an ID of incomplete. So we can copy this, and the next will be the task to display the closest house to ours. And here for the placeholder, we'll place an ID of closest. This is just a HTML code, nothing scary. Here we're opening our JavaScript code, and let's test first if it's interpreted by the browser by issuing hello. And now we can open our browser, type buildings.html. The HTML result is printed, and here in the console we also have hello printed. The first task is to fetch the data from this resource. For this we'll use the fetch operator. We'll just type fetch, then the resource, so it will be HTTP, our local host. Basically we're using the same address with the same port we just saw, and we are accessing the houses URL. Since this is asynchronous operation, it will return promise, and we can catch if there are any errors, or in case of success we'll use the then operator. Here the then operator gives us the result or the data that we would like to display or to work with. So for now, let's say that we can just display it on the screen, and let's save and see the result. We refresh, and here in the console, actually we see this resource has been loaded. If we go to the network, we also see that we're using a fetch request, and here also we can see the result from the request. We see the data with the coordinates and the parameters loaded up. Now let's see how we can grab the data, since in the console we see not only the body but the headers, and we would like to convert all this data into JSON format. We would like with the data to grab it as a JSON format. So this will convert the data, and once this is ready, again we use another then, and this time we'll be using the result from the JSON and we'll be printing it. We save and refresh, and in the console we see all the 9 houses loaded up. Now here inside we will start working by showing the incomplete house data. Let's create a new variable which is called incomplete result, and inside, the moment we receive this data here, I will trigger the function called show incomplete, and to this function we will pass the just received data. For now that's it, and here we will log out the result from incomplete data. Let's format the document, and we are ready to write our function. We can just type function show incomplete. It will accept as a parameter a data which we'll call houses. Inside of the function, we would like to loop through all the houses. So we'll type houses.forEach, and here for each of the houses, we would like to just display house, and here each individual house data. All right. We'll comment those lines here, and let's run the code. We see object. This means that the data is, let's say, encapsulated in the object. We can just use JSON.stringify, which will grab the same data and place it nicely on our console. And we see for each of the houses we have information. We would like to filter out all the houses which have no rooms or they are missing any other data. For this we'll create a new array, no data. It will be empty. And here if we detect such house inside of the loop, we'll push the detected data inside of this array. So we can type if we don't have inside of the current house params. And if you can remember here, these are the params. So if this is missing, or part of it, the rooms are missing, this is or inside of the house we're missing the rooms parameter. We would like to push inside or to place data inside of our no data array. So we'll type no data push, and we'll place the current house which satisfies those two rules. Okay. After this, we can display the resulting array on the screen. So here we can just type console walk no data to see what we have inside. Let's go to the browser. We see the array is empty. I'm sorry, not pop, but push. Pop removes the last item from array, and this will push the data inside. That's why the array was empty. And here, if we refresh, we see two houses which actually are missing parts of the information and being filtered and are inside of our resulting information array. So now let's return this array. So we can type just return no data, and this will return the resulting information and we'll place it inside of this variable, and we can log out the result here. So basically to result into the same information. Also, if you remember, the task was also to sort the data by house name. This can be accomplished very easily. Once we are out of this loop, before returning the data, let's create one variable which is called sorted, And we would like to use again the no data resulting array, and we'll use the sort function. This basically will sort the data automatically for us, but we have to provide based on what we would like to sort the data. We have comparison between two values inside of this array, so we'll type house1 and house2 as the input parameters. We would like to sort the data based on their names, so I'll just write first the function for you to see. house1.name minus house2.name, and then I'll explain what does it mean. So this function will go through all the elements inside of the array, and for each of them we'll check if the second one letters are after the first one, and if they are, they'll replace their positions. So it's very easy like this, just to implement our own functions in which we are just providing algorithm on how we would like the resulting array to be sorted. And again, for the result, we will returning the sorted array. And that's for now. We can test the code, and we see house with the name of 2 is in front of the house with the name of 6. Okay, the next task is a little bit more complicated. We will have to calculate which house is closest to ours. Let's first get the coordinates of our house. So we find it here. So we see the latitude and the longitude here. We grab those parameters and we'll insert them here inside of our function. These are the parameters, and we can create actually a target object out of those. So we can type let target equals to, and we'll create empty object. Inside we'll place those two parameters and we'll format them to look like an object. Then of course we can use target .lat or .lon in our code further. We would like to create a new function and save the result of this function into closest result. So the new function will be show closest. We'll pass data just like this function show incomplete, and also we'll pass this target because we would like to compare all the data we have, so all the coordinates we get in our JSON file with our target coordinates. And that's how simply we can invoke the function. Now let's build the function. So type function show closest, and for now we'll just display hello, just to ensure that the data and the whole program is working. Inside of the browser we see hello. This means that we are triggering this function. So let's calculate the distance, and for this we'll go back to our browser and we'll use this Harvesttime formula, which is determining the distance between 2 points on sphere based on the longitude and the latitude. Here we have one implementation of this function. This is the function. I'll just copy and use it. You can check in internet, there are a lot of implementations of the whole function. This is specific for JavaScript, and we'll go back to our file. Since this is a helper function, let's say we'll place it here in front. So this is the function, and we'll correct some things inside. For example, instead of var, everywhere almost we'll place const, not to pollute the scope as much as possible, and it should be working. So this is the function. We'll provide the first two parameters from this object we created here, target lat and target lon, and the second two parameters will be calculated from our buildings.json file while we are looping to all those objects inside. Okay, so we'll go to show closest function and we'll start writing. So first we'll loop through all the houses. Let result equals to houses, and this data will be houses actually, to be more understandable. Houses.sort, just like before. And for the sort, we would like to use distance sort. function that we'll create right now. It's a custom function for sorting. We'll type const distance sort, and now we'll have to define the function. As you remember, for the sorting algorithm, we're comparing two values. So let's say that we're comparing house 1 and house 2, which are just parameters. Doesn't mean that this is house 1 and this house 2. It's just a parameter we are using here. So first we'll be calculating the distance from target to house 1. Then we'll be calculating the distance from target to house 2. And they'll be comparing two distances. Okay, let's write this part. So we'll type const distance 1 equals 2. And now we use this function, get distance here. For the first two parameters, as we remember, we will use our target parameter passed here. So type target latitude and target longitude. And then the second two parameters, we'll have to grab them from the house 1. So we'll just type house 1 dot lat and house 1 dot longitude. Let's check those lat and long, and we see that they are not directly a property inside of the house object like the name is, but actually they reside in another array which is called chords. So this means that we have to type house 1 dot chords dot latitude, house 1 dot chords dot longitude. So this is the distance 1. For the distance 2, we will use the same function. We'll just replace 1 with 2. House 2, house 2. And now the easiest part is the end result. We'll just return distance 1 minus distance 2. So we will just return which one is the shortest. So this is our distance sort. And here on the console, let's log out what's going on, saving and heading up to the browser. Refreshing the data, we see 10 houses. If we compare the coordinates, we see that this is really close to the first one compared to the third house. Actually, and the first result, we see our house. And let's see how we can remove this and only get an array which will show results from house number 6. We can just use the structure ring, which is in this format. So we would like from our result to create a new array. Inside of this array, we would like to skip the first result, and we would like to take a rest with the rest operator. Also, we have to provide the name of the array. Let's say it will be called closest. We can provide const as a type of the variables here. Inside of closest, we'll be having all the information from this array from the second item onwards. We can check this by typing console log and then closest. And when we go to the browser, we see that house 6 is now first result. And of course we can return from this function. So now we have the two functions, show closest and show incomplete. They are returning proper results. Let's finalize the code by placing the data not only in the console, but placing it inside of our HTML template. We will use a function called print result. We would like to grab data, and for second parameter, we would like actually where to place this data after we are properly formatting it. So let's write target element. If you remember, in our template, we had two divs with IDs, so we can provide those IDs as a second parameter here in the target element. Let's create one temporary variable output, and it will be empty for each of the data.forEach. We'll loop through all the elements and let's call each element house. And for each of the element, we would like to fill inside the output with this element. So output plus equals, we will use object template literals. So we'll write $, and then inside the variable we would like to display, let's say first we would like to display house.name. And for now this is enough. Let's first log the output. Of course we have to run this function, so let's find a proper place where we can run the function. Here, when we have our results, we can just run the function, print result, and we will use, let's say, incomplete result. For the second parameter, it requires one of the two IDs that we would like to place the information. So we'll use this incomplete. We'll write it with this ID incomplete, like this. Let's see what will happen. And we see the names house2 and house6 are written. And now it's time to use the target element and to attach all this information towards our template. For this, we'll be using document object model function, which is called query selector. So we'll type document.query selector, and we'll select actually our target element. The moment we find it, we'll just want to replace its inner HTML with our output variable that we constructed. So we are finding this target element, we're replacing it with the information here. We're saving, let's see the result. And we see our data appeared from the console straight into the HTML. So for now this works. Let's continue here displaying more properties. We would like to display the value of the house, the rooms, the latitude and the longitude. This is for the latitude, this is for the longitude. The value and the rooms were inside of the params. Here, they were inside of the params, the room and the value. And here those were inside of the coordinates. .coords, .lat, .coords, .longitude. And let's place a little bit of space after each record and a break tag. Okay, here is value, and let's save and see what will happen in the code when we run it. We see you cannot read property value of undefined, and let's check the data, and we see some of the properties doesn't have a value parameter, such as here this house number 6 doesn't have a value parameter, and the moment we are running through all the houses here for each and trying to display this value parameter, of course the interpreter will complain and will produce this error. An easy way to fix this is to write another function which will initially pass through all the records and fix it for us, so we will not have problems afterwards with the displaying of the data. So let's write quickly this function. We'll call it prepare result. It will take a parameter of houses. This will be our array. And for each of the houses, if we don't have data inside of each of the house we are looking currently, its parameters of the house is empty. We'd like to recreate it. So we'll type house params goes to new object, and inside of house params we'll place even rooms that they are 0. So this will happen. We're creating the object and we're filling the new rooms as 0. Basically almost the same would like to happen if we have parameters but we don't have the rooms inside of the parameters. So we'll just hard code the rooms to 0. Let's format the code. So to recap, we are looping over each house, and if we don't have parameters, we're creating this object and we're feeding the data. If we have parameters but we don't have part of the parameters, we're filling the data. The thing that we would like to do is, after working with this houses array, to return it. Let's test first the function, console log, what we have inside of the houses. We would like to run the function inside of our print result. So we'll just type let proper data equals to prepare result data. And here we'll run the code. So for now, we see everything is okay. We have 0 rooms. If you wanted to fix this, we can again write another if statement here, but this time we'll be not looking at params rooms, but we would like to fix the value. So we'll type params.value. And this way, you see, we don't have undefined results, which may cause trouble afterwards in printing the data. And now, in order to print the proper result, we'll use the proper data, which came from this prepare result function here. So basically, we'll print everything that we have from the proper data. We see no error so far. Let's display now the close house to hours. And since we have the result here, closest result, we can just use the same function print result, but we'll pass closest result as a parameter. And here we don't want to fill and override the incomplete element in our template, but we'll just grab the closest element. And we save and refresh. And we have our task completed. Here are the houses with incomplete data printed. Here are a list of houses sorted by which one is closer to ours. So that's it, guys. If you find the information useful, you can subscribe to the channel to receive more.